Godfrey, and I'm the sheriff. We would like to thank all of you for coming this afternoon for this release. It's a very important thing that we think the citizens of this county need to know some of the facts about what happened that night. But to begin with, we would like to publicly express our condolences to the Garner family. We have no interest in being in an adversarial position with the family. Regardless of his troubled past, we know that his family loved him, and we are very sorry for their loss. Our goal again for these news conferences is to make the public aware of the very dangerous and volatile situation in which our deputies and the police officers from the Pinehurst and Aberdeen police departments were placed that night, and the very professional way in which they responded to a domestic disturbance at 106 Forest Place in Aberdeen, North Carolina. On Saturday morning, July the 28th, our deputies and officers from the Aberdeen and Pinehurst police departments responded to the Garner residence with the intent to peacefully resolve an ongoing domestic dispute. Unfortunately, it ended with an officer-involved shooting and with the death of Kenzie Garner. As you know, the SBI is conducting a separate investigation of this shooting incident at our request. We do not know when that report will be completed. The SBI also conducted a crime scene search, so we will not be able to answer any questions to you or from you in regard to the evidence that was collected at the shooting scene. When completed, the SBI will provide their report to the district attorney, but regardless, we've completed our investigation of this incident. And as a result of our investigation, we firmly believe that our deputies and the officers involved in this incident performed their duties that night and used deadly force in compliance with federal, state laws, and in compliance with our policies. The deputies involved in this shooting incident will return to their normal duties on Wednesday, August the 15th. My decision to return these deputies to their normal duties is based upon the interviews that we've conducted and a review of the body camera video of the incident. The Aberdeen officer and the two Pinehurst officers did have body cameras. The cameras were activated and did record the incident from the time of their arrival until several minutes after the shooting itself. There is a legal procedure that has to be followed for the release of the video recordings. I have no objection to the release of the video recordings. However, we are not the law enforcement agency in control of the video recordings, and those agencies will still have to comply with the law on the release of those video recordings. I gave you a handout that has to do with our policy on the use of deadly force. And if you look at section 302.4, you'll see where it discusses the use of deadly force is justified in the following circumstances. A deputy may use deadly force when it is or appears reasonably necessary to protect himself or herself in this case, or others, from what he or she reasonably believes would be an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. Imminent does not mean immediate or instantaneous. An imminent danger may exist even if the suspect is not at that very moment pointing a weapon at someone. For example, an imminent danger may exist if a deputy reasonably believes the following: the individual has a weapon or is attempting to access one, and it is reasonable to believe that the individual intends to use it against the deputy or another person. As you will hear in the 911 recording and the information that we obtained from Danny Garner, the father of Kenzie Garner, our deputies and the other officers involved in this incident responded to a very dangerous and volatile situation. I'm going to provide you with a summary of what happened that morning based upon those interviews and the 911 recordings. At approximately 2:00 a.m. that morning, Kenzie Garner and his girlfriend were in an argument in the front yard of the Garner residence. Danny Garner, Terry Garner, who is the mother of Kenzie Garner, and Alyssa Garner, who is the sister of Kenzie Garner, went outside in an attempt to resolve that argument. After having her car window broken out, Kenzie Garner's girlfriend left the residence. At approximately 2:51 a.m., Danny Garner, Terry Garner, and Alyssa Garner went back inside the residence and locked the doors. Alyssa Garner called 911 as they were going back inside the house. While Alyssa Garner was on the phone with our dispatcher, Kenzie Garner was trying to break into the Garner residence. He broke the storm door out and he kicked the front door in an attempt to enter the residence. Danny Garner braced a chair against the front door to prevent Kenzie Garner from entering the residence through the front door. Unable to open the front door, Kenzie Garner then went to the rear of the house and kicked the sliding glass door open, shattering the glass and providing him with access to the inside of the residence. At this time, which is approximately 2:53 a.m., both Alyssa Garner and Terry Garner called 911. Alyssa Garner spoke with our dispatcher, and Terry Garner spoke with a 911 dispatcher until the call was transferred to our dispatcher. Danny Garner then went to his bedroom to prevent Kenzie Garner from accessing the rifle that was inside Danny Garner's bedroom. Danny Garner told Kenzie Garner that he was not going to allow him to have access to the bedroom and to the rifle. Kenzie Garner then went into the kitchen where he obtained a 12-inch butcher knife. He returned to Danny Garner's bedroom. During this time, Kenzie Garner told Danny Garner that he would die before he went back to prison. Because Kenzie Garner was now armed with a 12-inch butcher knife, Danny Garner decided to leave the residence and told Terry Garner and Alyssa Garner to both leave the residence. Danny Garner assumed that Alyssa Garner had gone out the front door of the residence, but later learned that she had gone to her bedroom and locked herself in her bedroom. Outside, Danny Garner told Terry Garner to turn down the light on her telephone, basically so he couldn't see it. At approximately 2:58 a.m., Deputy Griffin and Deputy Hussey arrived at the Garner residence. At approximately 2:59 a.m., Deputy Justin Mack arrived at the Garner residence. At approximately 3:09 a.m., Sergeant Ballard arrived on the scene. And a few minutes later, of course, the Aberdeen officer and the Pinehurst police officers arrived. During that period of time from when Deputy Griffin arrived until the shots were fired, deputies instructed Kenzie Garner to put down his rifle multiple times. Danny Garner told us that he heard Kenzie Garner calling his mother by name. Danny Garner told us that he heard a deputy tell Kenzie Garner that if he would put down his rifle, that the deputies would allow him to see his mother. He said he then heard Kenzie Garner respond with several obscenities. At approximately 3:13 a.m., 3 deputies and 1 Pinehurst police officer fired multiple shots at Kenzie Garner, with 1 shot fatally wounding him in the chest. 4 deputies, 2 Pinehurst officers, and the Aberdeen officer all state that Kenzie Garner raised his rifle and pointed it in the direction of a deputy or deputies, placing the deputy or deputies in imminent danger of being shot. Again, in closing, regardless of his troubled past, we know that his family loved him and we're sorry for their loss. Now at this time, we want to play the 911 tape for you and also the radio transmissions, if you'll go ahead.
No, man, what the fuck are you doing? Stop, man!
Okay, now, what's the address for receipt?
Please come into 106 Forest Place! Please, let the fucking gun go! 106 Forest Place, Aberdeen!
Forest Place?
106 Forest Place, Aberdeen!
Okay, you need law enforcement?
Come now, please, please, please!
Okay, stay on for the sheriff's office, don't hang up.
Please, come on, my brother's throat!
Okay, sheriff's office.
106 Forest Place, Aberdeen. My brother's drunk, he's assaulted his girlfriend. Linda, please come! Goddamn! Goddamn!
Ma'am, what's your name?
Alyssa Garner. Please
Alyssa
come.
Garner. And is your brother?
Yes, please come.
What's his name, ma'am?
Arthur Garner. Please
Okay.
can you come?
Okay, are there any weapons you think he's been drinking?
Yes, he's just trying to grab your gun. Please come. We got him outside, we just locked him outside.
Okay, where's the gun at?
Windows and blood everywhere. Please
Ma'am?
come.
Ma'am, listen to me. Answer my questions and I'll get somebody out there. Where is the gun at?
We got inside the house. He's outside the house.
Does he need EMS?
I don't know.
We'll get him out there as soon as we can.
His girlfriend left.
Okay,
That's the
we'll
window in front of
get
the
somebody
porch.
out there as soon as we can.
Please.
Six-two Sheriff's Office, be 1023. Looks like the delivery driver just left the area. Check, right?
So, Sheriff's Office, 41.
US 1 Alpha, 7 miles away.
So, 1025 106 Forest Place, 106 Forest Place. Kenzie Garner is your complainant. Going to be a possible domestic with her brother, Arthur Garner, and his girlfriend. Male says he busted out to the female's window, and she says they had gotten a weapon away from him. He's locked outside the residence, and not sure if he's going to need EMS or not.
Yeah. 2070 single subs late advised.
62, are you 10-4?
You can divert. I'll be finished up.
10-4, Sheriff's Office, I'll be around 4 seconds.
27, I'll copy in around.
Please, can you send someone to 106 Forest Place? He's breaking all the windows out the house.
Okay, stay on the line.
Yeah! Please, come on!
Okay, Sheriff's Office.
Please send someone to 106 Forest Place. He's breaking all of our glass windows, all of our storm doors. Please, please.
Ma'am, I got no ma'am. We got deputies on the way.
Enough.
I can't help it, man.
Enough.
Well, they're on their way. I got 3 on the way.
Please, you need more than 3, I'm telling you. Please.
We got officers on the way.
Blood everywhere, please.
We got officers on the way, ma'am. Do you need me to stay on the line with you?
No.
Okay, all right. We got officers on the way.
Now he's getting the knife. Please.
Okay, we got them on the way. I'll let them know. Do you need me to stay on the line with you, ma'am? Do you need me to stay on the line with you, ma'am?
No, yes. He's getting the knife, now he's getting the gun. If he
Okay.
kills one of us, I mean, please can someone come. Please.
Man, we got deputies on the way. Please don't be not getting them there any quicker.
Well, okay.
I understand that.
Please, you go find my husband.
Okay, now one.
Please help my husband. My son's after the gun, my son's trying to stop. Please help.
What's the address?
106 Forest Place.
Okay, they don't.
He's gonna hurt my husband.
Okay, we've had somebody else call in. We had the sheriff's office. They are on the way. Okay.
He's gonna better tell him he's in trouble.
Okay, all right. What kind of weapons involved?
There's no weapons involved. He's dangerous.
Okay. All right. There it is. You said Miss Forest Place.
Yeah, but keep him away from the gun as long as he can.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said,
Please hurry.
they're on the way. Okay. If anything changes, just keep us going.
Okay, folks, he's gonna put your knife. Please don't hurt somebody.
Okay. They're coming.
Somebody.
They're coming. Okay.
26 back, please come on.
All right. They're coming as fast as they can. Okay.
I'm the one I could get hold of him.
Yeah. Try to get to a safe location for me.
Those two calls actually came in together. You notice a little difference in the sequence of the timing. Well, what happened is while our dispatcher was on the phone with Alyssa Garner, the other call came in from Terry Garner to our dispatch center, and she was on the phone with the 911 dispatcher until our dispatcher finished speaking with Alyssa Garner, at which time he then starts the conversation with Terry Garner. So the first call you heard is from Alyssa Garner. The second call you heard is from Alyssa Garner. And the final call that you hear is from Terry Garner, who is Kenzie Garner's mother again. And the second call and third call both came in about the same time.
Sheriff's Office, all units are out to Forest Place. Bill subject gained access back into the residence. She says he's getting a knife and also possibly grabbing a gun at this time.
And for
27.
T2 Sheriff's Office, I'm clear to 11, I'm out to the event.
Sure.
Sheriff's Office, kind of a good start at 41. Would you mind seeing if there's an Avenue unit closed and not Pinehurst, please?
Sure. 53 be advised, Aberdeen's office 10-6, also if I can't get a Pinehurst office.
10-4. Sheriff's Office, would it be quicker if I just switch to their channel and ask them?
Public service at this time.
10-4.
What's your location, Victory?
About to turn on the campus.
I'm about to turn on the Highway 5 off to 11.
10-4. I'm still gonna 10-12 regardless for somebody there at the entrance to Sherwood.
Also Pinehurst is 10-17.
10-4, thank you.
41 to 53, I'm turning on the red one now.
10-4.
Big cases all units, I tend to call the residents back and they got no answer.
10-4. 10-4, I'm in the area right now. Sherwood Drive, since we have units that are almost closed on the 10-12 right here.
10-4.
T2 is turning on Sandhills off Highway 5.
10-4. Got 41 behind me, we're headed up to Forest Lake now, we'll buy. And for Sheriff's Office, go ahead and show myself and 41-10-23, all units, close communications.
So all units hold the traffic until 53 and 41 go by.
62 will back, you had to go play out the window.
Mark report.
41, anything?
Sheriff's Office 41, all units status.
6-4.
10-4.
63, 41, 10-4. We'll leave the grandmas out back with each child, we're trying to locate them.
10-4.
10-14, sound like shots coming from the residence.
10-4, copy shots coming from the residence.
10-14, they're advising me, mother and children inside the residence, the children are not here. The father and mother outside, have them go next door. Oh, yes, I do. Can you cut off your headlights so I can run across, please? Can you have it pull up? Turn the light off.
They got a shield back here, doesn't
All units, just be advised, Aberdeen officer is 10-17 this time. EMS is also stationed if needed.
10-4, if you go just about there, I'm gonna make sure they cut off their headlights and they pull up.
All advised.
27 is out with them, every officer's right behind me.
10-4, copy, Rick.
27 sheriff's office, 2 shots fired.
27, 10-4. Shots fired. 27, do you need any more officers out there?
10-10, we have none.
10-4.
We'll get car 9 and give you public service.
10-4, copy, Rick.
And that should be it. On the Saturday morning, I made a comment that the officers fired in response to being shot at by Kenzie Garner. And that comment was based upon apparently a miscommunication that I had with some of the investigators. I'll take responsibility for that, but it was based upon the best available information that we had at the time. And if it created any ill will from the family, I certainly apologize for that. But regardless, all the officers involved saw Kenzie Garner point a weapon out of the residence from the front door. A couple of the officers saw him actually working with the weapon inside the residence as if he was trying to load the gun. As to whether or not he actually fired any rounds, we don't have any evidence at this time that we have no spent shell casings that he actually fired any rounds, even though, as you heard on the recording, Deputy Griffin thought she heard the sound of gunshots coming from the residence. And at this time, we'll answer any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Lamb, WRAL. Sheriff, did the officers who responded to this scene, did they know of his criminal background? Do you know if they knew when they were on the way?
I know that some of our deputies did, so as to whether these officers did, I do not know.
Did they ever see him with a knife or just the gun?
Just a gun.
And Sheriff, do you mind clarifying at what time, because he didn't have the gun during the last phone call that you guys had with him, at what point did he already have the gun by the time officers arrived on scene?
He had the gun apparently during the second conversation you heard on the telephone, is when he came into possession of the weapon. He, as I understand it, he kicked the back door open, went inside. The sister's on the phone at that time, so either during that conversation or shortly after that conversation, he came into possession of the rifle.
Shortly after the conversation, because she says on the phone that he grabbed the knife, so shortly after that,
That's
he ended
correct.
up getting the gun? And then
Before
by the time deputies arrived on scene, he already had that gun in his possession?
That's correct.
And can
Did
you,
you point that at officers, the gun?
He pointed in their direction. Whether he actually had an officer in the sights of the gun, there's no way for us to know.
can you clarify again how many officers fired and which officers? I know you said there were 3 deputies.
There were 3 deputies and 1 Pinehurst officer that discharged their weapons.
Gotcha. And your officers are going back on the street.
The 4 deputies from our sheriff's office. That would be Sergeant Sean Ballard, Deputy Justin Mack, Deputy Corporal Dustin Huzzy, and Deputy Stephanie Griffin.
So your internal investigation is over, but you're just waiting on the SBI
That's correct.
to finish theirs.
That's correct.
Have you been in contact with the family?
I was in contact with the family, the father and one of the sisters this past Friday.
And they obviously know these tapes are being released today. So they know what we're gonna hear. I mean, they know that we're gonna hear
No.
what, they don't.
No.
The miscommunication that you're talking about, is that, when you had first, mentioned that there was a shootout?
That's correct.
But now you're saying it's not, there
That's
wasn't
correct.
one?
How many times was Garner shot?
Garner was shot 1 time, based upon the information we have.
And so, based on what you're saying with your internal investigation, you feel like the use of deadly force was appropriate?
That's correct.
And that's based on what the officers heard from that 911 call, the information that was given to them?
That's correct.
And then what they saw when they got to the scene?
That's correct. In our review of the video camera body footage.
So the standard is that they believe that their lives or the lives of others could be in imminent danger?
That's correct.
And that's that standard is used by law enforcement across,
That standard was set by the Supreme Court.
right, that's not your standard,
That's correct.